Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Yakoob Ahmed. I'm an Ottoman historian. And basically, for Yakeen Institute, I've written a paper on encouraging the need to study Ottoman studies and why that would be important for us as Muslims. One of the main reasons when I was talking to people about writing this article was I noticed that there was a dearth in the understanding that Muslims had by and large of 600 years of history. Now, one may ask the question, why is Ottoman history more important than any other history for Muslims or Islam? And I'm not going to make the claim that it is. I think they're all equally important and that we should study as much as we can. And in that sense, it's a false question to ask why it's more important. But for me, as an Ottoman historian, I can only put down the answers of why I think this, as much as anything else, should be equally important. And one of the things that we notice is over 600 years of history that very little in the last 20, 30, 40 years in regards to contributions regarding Ottoman history has come from Muslims from around the world. And that's an important question for me. So the one thing I wanted to do with this paper was to start a discussion. And rather than emphasize on giving you answers, to start having a set of questions being asked, so that we can start to ask ourselves what happened in the last 400, 500, 600 years, and especially the last 100 years, in which the development of the nation state, nationalism, secularism in particular, has had a wide-ranging impact on Muslims around the world, not only in what we would call East Asia, West Asia, but also the neighboring countries, the Muslim world, and Muslims in the West. So the importance that I felt was the issue of Muslim agency. And when I came into Ottoman studies, one of the things I realized was that very few Muslims were invested in this subject area. This was something that was a concern to me. I mean, I myself came into it accidentally, in fact. But how can we make Muslims more active in regards to the studying of Ottoman studies? And one of the things I noticed is because Muslims didn't even see it as part of their own domains, part of their own sort of worldview about life. More and more Muslims were studying subjects like engineering, medicine, and so forth. And other Muslims were studying Sharia, Hadith, and so forth. But history was something that was missing. And Ibn Khaldun himself talks about the need for Muslim historians. There was a point in Islamic history where history was being written by the ulama. Now history has gone into the more academic domains. But investment by Muslims is very little. So I wanted to hear the Muslim voice, mainly because I wanted Muslims to have agency about how they speak about themselves, how they speak about their past, and how they perceive what their past was like. Because this is an important aspect of history, which is that in order to understand who you are right now and place yourself in the world, often we construct our identities based on how we view the past and then how we ought to be. And so in that sense, it was important for me to look at the Ottoman world in particular, which straddled across 3 continents, by the way, and then was networked to the Asian subcontinent, to China, to Russia, to the continent of Africa. And this is important in terms of understanding how Muslims interconnected with each other. So I wanted to start a discussion, and one of the things, the focus of this essay was broken down into 3 segments. The first was the need to study history in particular, and then Ottoman history. The second was, can Islam and the Quran in particular be helpful or instructive in the way that we view ourselves as historians? And then finally, it was a brief overview of Ottoman studies in particular. And on each way, what I did was to try to encourage a set of questions rather than give you answers, because my hope is that we can kick on from here and add more to how things are constructed. And so one of the things that I spoke about with the help of my colleagues was to look at 3 components, which was ideology, narrative, and language. And I'm very grateful to my colleagues and friends who actually highlighted this to me. And I realized that this is important because Muslims need to see Islamic history written from their own perspective, their own creed, their own ideology. Muslims need to then understand what the narrative means to them, reclaim back the narrative, and have agency over their own narrative. And finally, the way that language is used to speak about Muslims and what sort of languages were used in the past, and in particular the Islamic languages. So the objective of this paper was actually designed to ask a set of questions regarding Ottoman history, of which I am a specialist in. And I hope that I can encourage more Muslims to engage in this debate globally so that we can start to ask the questions of what this means to us as Muslim historians. So thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.